Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome back to Hey Sister Girl. I'm so glad that you are with me tonight because tonight we are going to be talking about one of the biggest nutrition beliefs that most of us grew up with. If you've ever been constipated, if you've ever gone a few days without a BM, if you've ever even mentioned it to your doctor, or maybe you talked to your mama, or you talked to your best friend, you probably heard exactly the same advice. Eat more fiber, have some bran cereal, drink some Metamucil. How about eat some prunes or take a fiber supplement? For decades, it's been the standard answer. But tonight, I want us to stop and ask a simple question. Is that recommendation actually supported by evidence, especially for people eating a primarily animal based way of eating, right? Well, if you guys are new here tonight, my name is Robyn Heron, and I am your carnivorous grandma, and this is Hey Sister Girl. I'm a certified metabolic health coach, and I've been living a carnivore or primarily animal based way of eating for more than 3 years. I am a health coach, a nutrition coach, and so I coach people also toward a primarily animal based way of eating because I've seen what it has done in my own life and in the lives of literally hundreds of other people, maybe even thousands of people. And so I want to be completely transparent tonight and just let you know I don't recommend fiber. I do not recommend fiber. Now, let me just say this plainly. I am not a physician or a doctor or a medical professional. So, all of my advice is coaching advice, but I do not recommend fiber, particularly for those of us who are on an animal-based way of eating, carnivore, keto, primarily animal based, to make yourself have bowel movements, right? So that's not the way that I do my coaching. And tonight I'm going to talk about why that is. And I don't want it to be because somebody said so, but we want to look at the physiology, we want to look at the history and at the available evidence and talk tonight about, do you need fiber in order to go? Do you need fiber? Is it required for healthy bowel function? If we think about it, I just talked to my mom. She said that I need to take some Metamucil is one thing, and then looking at the evidence is another thing. So tonight we want to go into it. So here's my story. I started on carnivore, primarily animal based way of eating about 3.5 years ago. And I was one of those persons who was chronically constipated. Yes, tonight we are going to talk about, doing because it is a big factor. It is a thing that people are concerned with when you say, um, I'm eating only meat. They're like, well, wait a minute. How do you go? Right. So I wasn't really worried about it, but I had been told all of my life that vegetables keeps everything moving. And I actually believe this as well. And I thought, kind of like many people do, that if I stopped eating fiber, my digestive system would simply stop working. And so maybe you believe that also. But I made the change. I removed the sugar. So a long time ago, I removed sugar from my way of eating by going on a keto diet. And then I removed all the processed foods. So I stopped eating all the packaged processed, highly addictive foods. And then 3.5 years ago, I went carnivore, where I moved most all plants from my way of eating. And so something happened when I did that I really wasn't expecting. I was actually kind of shocked that it actually happened, but my digestion got better. So I was a person who was chronically constipated. I think I was undiagnosed with IBS, and just that person sitting in the bathroom for an hour trying to go, like crying on the toilet. Sorry. That's just the truth, right? And so my digestion got so much better. That constipation that I had dealt with since I was a child got better. Um, and my stomach quieted down, right? And, did I have fewer bowel movements? Probably so, because I removed the fiber that was causing me to have more bowel movements. But the issue was not, a lack of fiber. It was that I have less waste, right? And so the question that I had to ask myself was literally, had I misunderstood digestion all these years and what makes for good bowel function, right? Maybe the goal is not to have the biggest possible bowel movements, right? Maybe our goal is and should be to absorb our food efficiently. And so it's a new way. It's a paradigm shift. I've been talking about the paradigm shift a lot lately, of the way that we think about food and nutrition and eating and health, and change your diet and change your life, basically. So we know that fiber does have some effects. I'm not trying to debunk the fact that fiber does have effects, right? So fiber can increase the stool bulk. And in fact, that is what they recommend fiber for, is to increase your stool bulk. It can retain water in the colon, and it also can be fermented by the bacteria in the colon, which are physiological effects of fiber. But having an effect is not the same thing as being essential. So, have you been taught that fiber is essential to digestion? Right? That's the question. And so, yeah, it's not the same thing as being essential. So, does somebody who is eating a primarily animal based way of eating need fiber to maintain healthy bowel function? Because based on my experience, the answer to that question is no, absolutely not. I have not had fiber in over 3 years now, and I don't have a problem with the go. Okay. So we're going to take a look at some of the research, and basically my answer is no. Fiber is not recommended, or is not required in the human diet. So the great thing about science is that it always begins with a question, a hypothesis, if you will, not an assumption, or a belief, not a tradition. Like we traditionally believe that if we eat prunes, it's going to help our digestion. And it's definitely not based on something just because we've believed it or heard it our whole lives, right? So it really starts with a question. So instead of defending what we've already believed, I want us to become investigators. I want us to ask better questions. And I've been talking about this for quite some time on this show, that we need to be asking better questions. We need to be asking more questions. So where did the belief come from? Where did the belief that fiber is essential in the diet actually come from? And then where is it supported by evidence? Or is it supported by evidence? Does it apply to everyone? And if not, what should we be telling people instead of take some Metamucil for your constipation? So that's what tonight is all about. So I'd love to hear from you guys tonight. Drop first of all, let me know where you're watching from down in the comments. But let me ask you this question. When you were growing up, what was the first thing someone told you to eat if you could not go? Was it prunes? Was it bran cereal? How about vegetables? I know people that if they eat greens, that makes them go. Metamucil. What about coffee? Coffee makes some people go as well. So I have a feeling that many of us grew up hearing this kind of advice, like you need to eat something to make you go. And that's what makes this conversation so interesting. So go ahead and drop that down in the chat. Where'd the idea come from that we needed fiber for our digestion? And how did fiber become the undisputed hero of digestive health? Was it based on science, or did our history, culture, marketing, and the food industry play a bigger role than we even realized, right? So we're going to go back tonight and take a look at that and find out. You might be surprised. You might not be surprised. If you've been around here for a while, you might not be surprised at what we find out. All right. So, we know that fiber has effects. We know that potentially some people might feel better having fiber. But we want to just discover whether it's actually required for bowel function, right? Especially for those of us eating a primarily animal based way of eating. So, we're going to challenge a belief that we've had for generations. And we really need to ask where that belief came from. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate that. The beliefs don't just come up, they don't spring up out of nowhere. Somebody teaches and promotes these ideas. And eventually, you keep saying the same thing as many times as you can until it becomes accepted as fact, right? So I want you to think back to when you were young, you were a kid. How many times did somebody tell you to eat your vegetables? In fact, babies hate vegetables. Have you ever realized that? There's not very many vegetables that babies love, right? But they tell you to eat your vegetables because they're good for you. And though I'm not necessarily saying that all vegetables are evil, I have a lot of problems with vegetables. Vegetables are trying to kill me, right? But nobody really ever explained why this idea of eat your vegetables, they're good for you. It's just accepted because everybody around us believes it, right? So that same thing happened with fiber. Oh, my volume is really low. Okay, let me see if I can get my mic a little closer. Let me know if that's better. Let me know if that is better. Hopefully you guys can hear me a little bit better. I moved my mic a little bit closer. Thank you, Keystone Keystone Admin LLC. Thank you very much. Yeah, so everybody around us believe it. So we've heard that fiber keeps you regular, fiber cleans out your colon, fiber keeps everything moving. And it's been repeated so many times that most of us have never stopped to ask whether that is universally true. Please let me know if my audio is better. So how did this nutrition message get born? Like, where did this come from? Over 100 years ago, in the late 1800s and early 1900s, America was changing. We talked about this about maybe a month ago, right? Industrial food production was expanding. We talked about the World War and how they were making those meals ready to eat and shipping that food all over the world, and it had to be shelf stable and etc. Right? So during that time, breakfast was also changing. What we had for breakfast. So people who would normally have eaten eggs, bacon, sausage, maybe leftovers from dinner, or another hearty meal for breakfast were introduced to boxed cereals and grain-based breakfast. It's better, but my audio is still low. Let me see what's going. See if I can figure out what's going on. Let me know. Let me know if it's better. How's that? Is that better? Please help me. Yeah. So they had eaten bacon and eggs, and they switched over to these boxed cereals. Hopefully that's better. I think I've seen a light come on. One of the influential figures during that period was Dr. John Harvey Kellogg. Have you guys ever heard of him? I live in Kalamazoo, Michigan, which is a sister city to Battle Creek, Michigan, and it is basically the cereal city, Battle Creek, because it has Post over there, it has Kellogg. I mean literally, that Kellogg Sanatorium is right next door to me. What did John Harvey Kellogg do? He promoted vegetarian eating, and he believed that bland grain-based foods supported better health. His views shaped the early breakfast cereal movement, right? So, although many other cultural and commercial forces did contribute as well, he was like the game changer in cereals. As the cereal companies grew, they didn't just sell food, though. They sold an idea. What was that idea? That idea was that grain based breakfasts were modern and that they were healthy and that they were heart healthy. And yes, they were high in fiber. So I want you to pay attention to this because this is really, really, it's caused a huge problem for us societally. This is not a story just about cereal, it's all about marketing, right? So, because companies realized they could associate food with health, packaged processed food, particularly with health, they had something much more valuable than breakfast. Oh, raise your vibration. You have Kalamazoo family. Oh my gosh, you'll have to let me know who they are so I can see if I know them, right? This was a big money maker for them. My door is coming open, so hopefully you guys don't hear the kids. And they had a lifelong customer, right? So, marketing is super powerful. We've all seen it. You know, if you go in the grocery store, you'll see all the labels on all the packages that say high fiber, whole grain, heart healthy, supports digestive health, helps keep you regular. The messages are literally everywhere. And after enough years, they become bigger than just advertising. They become common knowledge. But common knowledge, first of all, just because it's common don't mean it's right. Secondly, it's not scientific, right? So history has taught us over and over again. Remember this one. Everything's better with blue bonnet on it, right? Everything's better with a good slathering of seed oils on top, right? Margarine being healthier than butter, right? We were told that fat was the enemy. Remember when we needed to have just egg whites all the time and egg yolks were our enemy? And even for a time, there was like a thing of eggs are just not healthy for you and stuff like that. So many of us changed the way we ate as this messaging and marketing shifts back and forth, continue to change the way we ate because we trusted the recommendations. But years later, the conversation changed. And so now I'm asking a different question. Not what does everybody believe, but what does the evidence actually show? And I'm seeing a lot of evidence just based on what they're calling anecdotal. This, even my own experience, is just anecdotal, right? But when I see so many people having so many similar results, then it makes me think, how long does something have to stay anecdotal before we say, yeah, this really does work, right? So there is a difference between being popular and being proven. I learned it on my own health journey that popularity doesn't determine truth, right? So when I started Carnivore, everybody was looking at me sideways. Really. They were like, what are you doing? You're going to kill yourself. It's been 3.5 years now, right? Everybody thought I needed vegetables to stay healthy. Everybody thought I needed fiber to keep my digestive system working. And my family and friends are very sincere, really truly believe that, right? But because of the sincerity does not mean that the advice was actually correct. And so it turns out that I didn't need fiber, right? So sometimes even well-meaning people, I think people have the best intentions, but we repeat what we have heard over time, what I've always heard, right? We keep repeating that stuff, and maybe some of it's not actually true. Hi. So somebody's got to come along and change these ideas, and we see this happening. It's becoming nutrition dogma. You know, as I asked earlier, did they tell you to eat prunes when you were a kid for constipation? Did they tell you what was the thing? What did they tell you when you're constipated? Do this. Somebody drop it in the chat. So this is not really only just about fiber then. It's about how we think, and how we've accepted nutrition belief without even examining where it came from, right? So, how many other ideas or concepts around nutrition, health, and eating, medicine, and all of that have we accepted the same way? We just didn't ask any questions. We did not question it because it's just basically what we have always done, right? So, once you start questioning one thing, then you realize I need to question everything, right? Start questioning, start asking the question. Because I want to know if we are heart healthy and we just need these small 100-calorie packs and we can reduce our size by you know eating less and moving more, why is the rate of obesity still rising? And why is the obesity rate skyrocketing through the roof, right? Why are so many people still taking medication for digestive problems? Is it just like we're all just designed with bad digestive tracts? I don't think so. I think our bodies are fearfully and wonderfully made, designed to heal themselves. Why are the grocery stores filled with foods that claim to be healthy while chronic disease increases exponentially? Why is this? We should all be asking these questions. We need to be questioning everything, not because we're looking for a trend, but because we're looking for answers and we want to know what is going on with this food that we're eating, and all of the different things around food, nutrition, eating, and health. All right, so we discovered where the belief came from. It was marketing, y'all. They was trying to make some money off of us by telling us that fiber was good for us and that we need it. We need it. We need this heart healthy fiber. We need fiber to be able to go to the bathroom. Hi, Coach Angela. Thank you for stopping by. I'm sorry. I don't know why they act like they don't. I'm going to go and close my door. Sorry. Be right back. I don't know if you guys can hear that. I mean, they are tripping tonight. I tried to put my headphones on, but they weren't working. All right. So let's move from where the belief came from, which is literally marketing, to biology. Okay. Because we need to look at our biology before we can determine or answer the question whether fiber is necessary. What does fiber do inside of the body? Does it nourish us? How about, does it get absorbed? Does it have a purpose? If it does have a purpose, does it mean we automatically mean that we need to eat it? So let's take a closer look at what the body does with fiber. Okay. So, one of the biggest misconceptions that people have is that fiber is a nutrient. Technically, fiber is not a nutrient, right? It's a type of carbohydrate that your body cannot digest with its own enzymes. Think about that for a second. It's a type of carbohydrate that your body cannot digest with its own enzymes, right? So the protein gets broken down into amino acids, fat gets broken down into fatty acids, and carbohydrates get broken down into sugars. This is just a real basic level nutrition class, all right? Those nutrients are absorbed through the small intestine and used by your body. Fiber is different though. It passes through the small intestine, largely undigested, and reaches the large intestine where it interacts with water and the microbes that live in your large intestine. Does it mean that it doesn't have any function? Not exactly. It does have some function. But what does understanding a function, it has a function? Does that mean that it's essential, right? Okay. So you probably heard that there are two main types of fiber. If you know it, put it down in the chat. So, two main types of fiber. One is soluble fiber. It dissolves in water and forms a gel-like substance. It can slow your digestion and can be fermented by certain bacteria in the colon. Insoluble fiber doesn't dissolve in water. It adds bulk to your stool and can speed the movement of material through the digestive tract for some people. So, both of these types of fiber can influence your bowel habits. That's why many healthcare providers recommend fiber as a first step for constipation. But have you ever been constipated and took fiber and basically became more constipated? I mean, constipation seems to like run in my family. And there's some really devastating types of things that happen with constipation, right? So, you know, fiber can influence your body to go to the bathroom, but it does not mean that it is required, right? So, let me give you a couple examples. So, for example, exercise lowers blood sugar, sleep improves hormone function, and sunlight helps your body make vitamin D. These are all beneficial influences, right? But we have to be careful not to confuse quote unquote has an effect with it is required in every circumstance. Okay. So when somebody particularly is on a primarily animal based way of eating, what are we eating? We are eating foods that are highly digestible. We're eating meat and eggs. We're eating fish. We're eating animal fats. Some people are having a little bit of cheese, right? And these foods leave very little undigested residue behind. So, this is the thing people think if I eat only meat, I'm not going to be able to go to the bathroom. That meat is going to stay in my body until until kingdom come. It's going to stay in my body till kingdom come, right? And that is just not true. Your meat products are highly available, bioavailable to the body, and your body can utilize almost all of it, which is why you see less waste, right? So your body uses most of what you eat when you eat a primarily animal based way of eating. That means that there's naturally less material reaching the colon. So what happens? You often have fewer bowel movements, and you might have smaller bowel movements. And that is completely normal. Completely normal. And it doesn't mean you're constipated, right? So we need to think about what does constipation look like, right? It just really means that there's less waste for you to eliminate. We have been conditioned to believe that bigger bowel movements mean a healthier digestive system. Does anybody have this idea? Like, yeah, I need to go to the bathroom 2, 3 times a day in order to prove that my digestive system is working as expected. I want you to think about that though. If your body is efficiently digesting and absorbing the nutrients from your food, wouldn't you expect to have less waste, right? And what is the stuff that's passing through the colon and out? It's waste, right? It's waste material. The stuff that your body could not do anything with it, right? So it's coming out its waste. So imagine that you're burning a clean burning fuel in your car. You'd expect less residue than if you burned something inefficient, right? So that same principle can apply to digestion. Animal foods tend to be highly bioavailable, meaning that your body can absorb and utilize a large portion of the nutrients. That does not mean plant foods have no value, okay? Not no value. But it does help explain why someone eating mostly meat often produces less stool. Less waste in means less waste out, and that is based on our physiology. Let's touch briefly on the gut microbiome. Microbiome, we talk about that often. Wait a minute. Are you thinking? I thought fiber feeds the good bacteria in our gut, right? Fiber is one source of fuel for certain gut microbes. There's a whole new study out about these gut microbes and how your body can really work with a carnivore based gut microbiome. So I think there's going to be lots more research coming out about that in the near future. But yeah, fiber is one source of fuel for certain gut microbes, and fermentation of some fibers produces compounds called short chain fatty acids. However, the gut microbiome is incredibly complex. I like to think of it like, have you guys been seeing the telescope that's looking out at the galaxies and seeing all of this, like they're saying that they're looking back at, the past and all these galaxies and just a crazy amount of stuff. I think like to think of the gut microbiome like that. It's very complex, right? And it changes based on what we eat. It does adapt to what we eat. So people eating primarily animal-based way of eating often develop a microbiome that's different from someone eating a high fiber, high plant, standard American way of eating. And so the gut microbiome will adjust. As I said, researchers are still learning what constitutes a healthy gut microbiome under different dietary patterns. So I think we'll start to see a lot more information coming out about gut microbiome and carnivore in the future. So we do not have evidence that shows that every healthy gut microbiome needs to look exactly the same. And in fact, it's not going to. It's probably, I mean, if I think about what I think it is, I think it's more like a fingerprint, right? It's going to be something that's unique to each and every person. So when someone says you have to eat fiber for your gut bacteria, my response is that the science is more nuanced than that. It's not that simple, right? So, when people come to me for coaching, I am talking to them about fiber. A lot of people are dealing right now with obesity, a lot of people dealing with type 2 diabetes, prediabetes, fatty liver, inflammation, autoimmune, digestive disorders. What they do not need is another bowl of bran cereal, right? They need metabolic healing. So that's why my focus is on removing the foods that are driving insulin resistance and chronic inflammation. So as people transition to a primarily animal-based lifestyle, they may ask, I'm not going every day anymore. I'm not going more than once a day anymore. Do I have a problem? And I have had people ask me this, and I'm like, okay, so let's think about what's going on. How do you feel? Are you straining to go? Most of them say no. No, I'm not straining to go. Are you in pain? No, I'm not in pain. Are you bloated? Nope, not bloated. Do you feel like you can't empty your bowels? No, I don't feel like I can't empty my bowels. I just don't have to go, and it's been 3 days. And I'm worried about that, right? So, my answer to that is your body is probably producing less waste. You're not having that fiber to bulk up your stool and make you need to go to the bathroom. Very, very simple answer. Now, if you are straining and you're having an issue and you're sitting in the bathroom for an hour and you're crying on the toilet because you can't go, that's a different story, and that might require a different conversation, probably around the lever that I like to use, which is fat. And we also need to talk about hydration. Are you drinking enough water? Are you getting your electrolytes? Those types of things to address the conversation if you really truly are constipated. Most of the people who have come to me with this question have not been constipated. They just are used to going more often than they're going on a carnivore way of eating. All right. So we talked about history. We talked about biology, and we talked about the scientific evidence. Oh, no, so now we're going to talk about the scientific evidence. All right. Not many studies on this that I have seen, that look at the fiber use in primarily animal-based way of eating, right? So, but there are some studies that shows that increasing fiber may help some people. But there's also studies that show that reducing fiber improve constipation in some people also. So how do we make sense of that? What does the research tell us about whether fiber is actually required for healthy bowel function? So let's dig into that next. All right. So I don't want you to walk away saying, Robyn said this. Robyn said that, right? I want you to understand why I believe what I believe about fiber. All right. So one of the most talked about studies, this study got a lot of attention. It was a 2012 study by some researchers in Singapore that studied people suffering from chronic constipation, right? So again, these were not people who were experimenting or trying out a carnivore way of eating. These were individuals that were literally just struggling with constipation. And so they divided these people into groups. One group continued eating fiber. Another group reduced their fiber. And the third group eliminated their fiber altogether. All right. So what do you think happened? Who had the best results from the constipation study, right? Was it number one, the group who continued eating fiber? Number two, the group who reduced fiber? Or number three, the group that stopped fiber altogether? Just drop one of those numbers down in the chat. Okay, so I'm going to give you the answer. All right, the people who eliminated fiber reported the greatest improvement on constipation symptoms. Can you believe that? They had fewer symptoms, less bloating, less straining, and more frequent bowel movements than they had had before. And that's literally the opposite of what many of us, most of us, have been taught, right? So that's just one study. It doesn't settle the whole debate. But, you know, this is what the science is showing, that increasing fiber is not the only solution for constipation, right? For some people, it actually makes that problem worse. All right. So let me kind of move through here because I could talk for a long time. Now, I've been carnivore for 3 years, 3.5 years. During that time, I have never needed to add fiber to have healthy bowel function. Just never needed to do it. Not even once. I've never been like, you know, let me just eat an apple or let me take some Metamucil, let me chew on some prunes. None of that stuff, right? Have I done in order to have healthy bowel function. And I'm not alone. So many thousands of people in the carnivore community are reporting the same experience. Now, so it works interestingly differently for different people because people who had chronic diarrhea, they experience elimination of that, or that slows down, stops. Or like me, if you had constipation, now you're no longer constipated. Right now, I will say this because there have been a couple of things that I have eaten or consumed that have caused that constipation to come back, and it could be potentially from dehydration, but you know, there was like some beef sticks that I ate one time that was like, okay, I can't eat these because they cause me to be constipated. So I'm not sure what kind of plant material was in those, but basically I'm assuming that it's come from the plants. All right. So thousands of people having great experience on carnivore and eliminating their going issues, right? So many people do go less often. I want to just call out, I think his name is Lee Copus, and he has a colostomy bag. And what he says is that basically you never see any meat in the colostomy bag. But what you do see is that fibrous material, the plants that come out whole in the bag, right? So So that's just a one point that I wanted to bring is that, people who have lost their colon are are also eating a primarily meat-based way of eating and seeing great results, right? So, most of the people that I've talked to or that I have seen their stories and watched their stories, all these anecdotal stories that I see on YouTube, on TikTok, and on Instagram, they describe something that sounds very familiar to me, which is less pain, less bloating, less constipation overall. And yeah, that would be my expectation. All right. So I want you to ask a question when somebody tells you that you need to eat fiber. Just a question. And that question is why? Why do I need to eat fiber? Fiber. Is it because it's essential? We just learned that it is not essential, right? Perhaps it may be helpful in certain situations. I don't know. But the question why leads you down the path, and you keep asking why until you get to the root cause of the problem, right? So we don't want to repeat what we've heard and just rely on that. We really want to understand why we believe these things. So here's where I stand. As you know, I recommend a primarily animal based lifestyle to improve your metabolic health. If you really want to take your health trajectory back into your own hands, I recommend at least trying it as an elimination diet so that you can see what is it that's really causing your problem. If you have any kind of, autoimmune conditions or metabolic syndrome or type 2 diabetes, all these different kind of disease states, what would it hurt to give it a try? Primarily animal-based lifestyle. For people who are eating a primarily animal-based way of eating, I don't recommend adding any fiber. You don't need Metamucil. You don't need fiber. You don't need to actually produce a bowel movement where there is not one, right? So we talked about the fact that eating primarily animal-based may mean that you have fewer and more further between bowel movements. And that might not even last forever, too. So that's another thing. If you're digesting your food well and your nutrients are bioavailable to your body and your body is able to utilize whatever you're taking in, right? If you feel good and you're not straining and you're not having pain trying to go, but you're just going a little less often, I don't see that as a problem that needs to be fixed. It doesn't need to be fixed. It ain't broke. Don't fix it, right? It's a normal adaptation to eating foods that leave very little waste behind, right? So, my goal is not to help you produce bigger stools. Why would I want to do that? It's to help you build better health. So tonight, we really want to start thinking about asking those better questions in general about everything. Because literally, our food pyramid, since I was a kid, has been upside down and backwards, and none of us questioned it. We just went with it, and we watched what happened to our society as we did that with this chronic illness and with obesity and with type 2 diabetes and just all this explosion of poor health and more medications, right? But when we examine the history, we realize that, it has a lot to do with marketing. It's somebody is making money off of you being constipated, right? So that is a problem, right? So I want you to stop letting marketing help you make your health choices. Make health choices that make sense for your body. Don't let your traditions replace your critical thinking. As again, did they tell you to eat prunes? Right? And don't assume that what works for one dietary pattern automatically applies to another. A standard American diet, if you're on standard American diet, you may need fiber to make you go. if you're on carnivore, it's not likely that you're going to need fiber to make you go. So ask questions. I don't know if you guys can hear that screaming in the background. Oh my God. We want to ask questions, we want to learn more, and we want to make better choices about our health, right? We want to change our health trajectory by making different choices. All right, you guys, I'm going to wrap it up here. I want to invite you to Impact, Meet Up and Eat Up with Carnivorous Grandma and Friends, September 5th, 2026, here, right here in Kalamazoo, Michigan. When I click the end stream button, you guys can watch the commercial. And I hope to see you here in Kalamazoo coming right up. For now, I will see you this Saturday on my Carnivorous Grandma Speaks. I'm going to be interviewing the Hungry Mind. I think his name is Joseph Reyes. And then also next week, we'll be back with another episode of Hey Sister Girl. All right. See y'all next time. Bye, everybody.